Have I made the most modular board in the world? Hi, I'm Chris from Good Enough Scenery. Maybe you've seen the videos of me putting this together. I'm now calling this basically complete, and I'm wondering whether it's the most modular wargaming board ever created. Now that might be saying quite something, and I may be completely more. I haven't seen all of the modular boards in the world, but let me introduce you to all of the different aspects of this, and then you can let me know for yourself what you think. So let's start with the basics of it. We have 4 tiles which are like this. We have 2 river tiles there, and then we've got these higher tiles. So there's one that's a 50mm section risen up, and we've got one which is 30mm, one half of it is on the other side of the board. So that's the very basics of it, and all of them can go next to any other one. But of course there is more. Let's begin by looking at one of the most basic tiles here. So obviously we have the tile itself, but inside of this we have these building footprints. These are 10cm squares. These ones are 20 by 10, so you could put 2 different 10 by 10 tiles in it. So this building here, for example, we can take out and we can swap, so this is now just open ground. But obviously there's more to it than that as well, as you know, as soon as I lifted it up. Inside of here we have a resin pour, hopefully looking like there's a bunch of collapsed rubble inside. And the same is true for this one as well, which means you can of course have buildings put in, you can have it just plugged so it's open ground. Alternatively, we can take a piece like this one here, we slot it in, and then we've got a sort of half and half going on, so this could be a slightly flooded area. Or, like I said, you could fill this entire thing with buildings and collapsed bits and pieces, so that it looks more like kind of a busier ruined city. So all of these freely and easily interchangeable across all of the different basic tiles, but the same can be said for the higher tiles as well, because across the entire board we have exactly the same building footprints for us to use our buildings and scatter terrain to put within. So it's scatter terrain which is held in place. But what about these other tiles, these risen up ones? Is there more than meets the eye? Yes, there absolutely is. So, we have the same thing with bits and pieces that can be replaced. I don't have the resin pour in here because it didn't feel like it would make any sense for these ones, but you can freely move around rubble and bits and pieces to make it suit your needs, as you might expect. Now, obviously, with these pieces, you can have them like this, or you can flip them around and have them at the edges like this. And as I've done that, you may have noticed that this side of the thing is actually painted as well. So this can be used as more of a corridor or a tight thing that's a tight gangway for models to go down. But there's more to it than that as well. So let me show you. So let's say you've set it up in this way, and you may notice that here next to this bridge, that's all a little bit tight, do you not think? So rather than have these set in place, I've actually got these so that they can freely move left and right along there. So this way they are absolutely solid forward and backwards, but left and right you can move them right up to the edges just like that, and they're solid enough to stay, which means you can actually have them offset. We've got there, meaning that you can take a staircase, which I haven't done quite yet, take a staircase and have some stairs go up on the other side, then you've got a very different piece of scenery to what we thought we had. And the same is true on the one at the back as well. It's often the case when I'm playing Middle-earth strategy battle game within the scenarios that you want a central objective. The same applies for an awful lot of other games as well. So I thought this would be a really interesting central objective when it's in the middle of the board, which means it has to have something interesting inside, which is why I created this church. It could be anything, and we have a 20 by 10 here, which doubles up, so it becomes a 20 by 20, so we can slot this in and have it as a church, or alternatively we can have it more open like that and have a statue inside. So this is interchangeable with 20 by 20 things as well. But obviously it can be done in the same way as the previous one, where it can be turned and had towards the outside. And if we had it towards the outside, then we can simply take a suitable building and have that on the edge, and obviously this can also slide backwards and forwards as we need it to. But what do you do if you don't want to use this thing as the central objective? Well, I've got you covered on that one as well. Sometimes you might want an objective to not be so high up, and you want it to be more on open ground, which is why I put a 20 by 10 in the centre and the edge of one of these tiles here, which means I can freely interchange the church, which slots in quickly and simply, or alternatively this kind of statue type area. Or if you didn't want them to be like that, then you can simply have a building and you can plug in the space with other tiles so it is more like just open ground. Or you can have it be a lot busier by having this filled up with various different buildings. You can see how quickly and easy it is to interchange all of these different bits and pieces to make the board be exactly as you might want to have it. So you're not set up in just one scenario, you have all sorts of different options so that you can make the board unique to your own particular needs. And that brings us onto the river tiles. So you see the river tiles, nice thick resin thing. There's two different ones. One has these piers, the other one doesn't. That's the only real difference. But we have these bridges made, and underneath the bridges we have these little plug slots. These are like mini versions of the building footprints. And what these allow me to do is actually take, let's say we don't want the ruined bridge in the centre, we want it off the edge. Well, you just bring it over and slot it in here instead, and all of a sudden it's in a different position. Same applies with just a rubble pile. You can have that there instead, or you could have that in the centre. So it's freely interchangeable. And the other thing is that the distance between these here is exactly the same as the distance between it on the edge of the tiles over here. So that means that whether you can use exactly the same pieces, no matter whether it's here or whether it's the one further back over there. Exactly the same principle applies. So you've seen the board with the river set up centrally, and there's a number of different options that you can have with that. So these higher sections, they could be in any position that you wanted to, as can the lower section. So here we've got a higher section on one side, lower section on the other, as if this is a kind of more important part of the city, or maybe it's just that it's a little bit higher. But there's many more ones that we can have. So generally it's to do with the river either being in the centre or at one edge. So let me show you another option. So that literally took 2 minutes and 57 seconds to go from what it was to how it is now. So let me show you how this is different. Now this setup here is something that I might like to use if it's the idea of a scenario where the city is being raided. So having the river all the way over on one side over here, and then the idea of working through the city up to the larger and more important buildings at the back. So lots of open ground, but also lots of buildings to hide in as well. And Astrid says, hello Astrid. But let's do another. What if you wanted the city to feel really busy? Well, then I set it up like this. Literally 2 minutes and 42 seconds later, we have this design here. Let me bring you in. So the river staying in the same place, but we have moved the higher section to a more central area, and we've taken the church from there and we've moved it down to here. So I've tried to put as many building footprints filled up with actual buildings rather than tiles as possible to create a really tight skirmishy feel to it, where you might be fighting really in the midst of a very busy ruined city, much like you see in the Battle of Osgiliath. So as many buildings on the lower sections compared to the higher sections, but the higher sections still looking decent enough because of the way in which they are plugged in with the little tile plug and play system, with the river staying exactly the same. Let's go for another. 2 minutes 58 for change that time, and it's not hugely different, but I like this as a combination of more open ground but with some tighter areas. So what's happened here is this top part has been split into two. Left that on there, accident. So we're using the back part of this on this side here to create quite wide but bottleneck type areas that, you know, if you can get people up here shooting down onto there, that would be quite a nice advantage. But you have some open areas combined with some tight, so it's a nice blend of the two. quite like, because you have the higher areas looking down onto here, and we have this central objective, which in this case is the church, but you can make it really open and have the statue type thing. I might put a statue on there at some point. There isn't one on there at the moment, but it works really well regardless of which way you play the board. So let's say there's no river here. It's often just the 4x4 setup, and if you're coming from this direction, like that, the north-south, or east-west, it creates a really interesting battlefield, and obviously you can easily move things around to go, well, actually, we want it to be a little bit tighter. People talk about, is there too much terrain, is there not enough terrain, how spaced out should it be? This really gives you the option to actually just go, actually, there's too much terrain, but we can just make it, don't want to have to move the whole board around, we can just plug it with a spare tile rather than reset up the entire thing. So it basically works as a battle map to a degree. Let's do one more. Quite predictably, it's the opposite of the one before. So instead of having the higher sections on the edges, we move them towards the centre. And I think this could be really, really fascinating. And I've done something which I haven't done a lot of in actual gameplay yet, but it's mainly because I haven't made tiny stair sets yet. And that's the idea of having the 30mm section next to the 50mm section, and then we have tiny steps, just literally maybe one step, so you can climb between the two different heights. But what I like about this kind of double higher section middle is the fact that because they slide between each other, you could actually slide them right up next to each other. That would be one different option. If we want that to be much wider, then we can slide it all the way across. We can do exactly the same thing on the other side, and then we have the most deliciously disgusting bottleneck in the world. So, Lord knows how many designs there are when you factor in all the different positions that the buildings can be in, and the different heights and the sliding, and the river could be 1/4 of the 1/5 of the way in, rather than just in the middle or just on the edge, and that is something I have played around with as well. But love to know what you guys think of it. Is it the most modular board in the world? I don't know, but whether it is or whether it isn't, I absolutely love it. Cannot wait to play more games on it, and would love to hear what everyone thinks about it. If you want one of these for yourself, you've got two options. You can either kind of get in contact, Chris at Good Enough Scenery, and pay me an awful lot of money because it was an awful lot of effort. Or alternatively, you can follow the tutorials on my channel, because basically everything that you see on the board has been covered. So we have the basic tiles, the resin pour, we've got how to do corner rooms, we've got bigger buildings, we have the river, we've got the bridges, we've got the octagonal building in the back corner there, got the gondola tower. All of it is covered in different tutorials, and I'll be putting a full video out of the entire thing in one video, just for ease of access as well. So really hope you've enjoyed seeing this series come together. Love to know what you think of the board, genuinely, constructive criticism welcome, obviously. But let me know what you think in the comments, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and let me know what you'd like to see me make next. Catch you for another video soon. Oh yeah, and back to a regular dining table in 6 minutes and 13 seconds.